All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praise, all honor, and all glory due to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. I want to give double honors to our apostles and our elders of Great Millstone that rule well. Peace, salutations, and many blessings to your elect Akim across the four winds of this earth, kicking this word in sincerity and in truth. All right, Waharakah Kodash. I'm the brother Sha'ar from the Great Millstone Dallas camp, and just doing a little studying, been meditating on a specific topic for the past few days. Just kind of thinking about how I want to place it into a lesson, but the spirit had me bring it out today, had me accumulate enough information to really go into. And this lesson is going to be based on the sons of the prophets, or the children of the prophets. And ultimately that's what we are, the ones that are preaching this word right now. When you really just go into this thing of ours and what it's about, we're carrying on a tradition or a legacy that our forefathers were doing. The standard that was ultimately set from the beginning, we're continuing going through that. Especially after this period of time where there was no prophets, there was nothing. The Lord is raising his men back up because we're living at the latter end, the last of the last days. All right. And when you really go into the history of the prophets, just a brief abridgment of the prophets, those were the mouthpieces of the Lord. Those are the mouthpieces of the Lord. That's who the Lord would speak to direct kings or direct the people, So like I had sneeze. But the Lord had put his word in those men, and they would speak his word. And that's what we're doing right now. Okay. So this thing of ours, this thing that we're a part of, isn't something light. This is a legacy that's continuing to be pushed forth. All right. It's an ancient legacy at that. And the Lord had called us and is using us as those vessels right now to speak his word. All right. So the lesson is going to be titled The Legacy of the Prophets. We are the sons of the prophets. OK. And I have that word legacy pulled up right here. And when you go into it, and this is an app I use called the Etymology Explorer. It's an app I use pretty frequently. It helps me out big time. But when you go into this word legacy, it says money or property bequeathed to someone in a will. Okay. And ultimately, we know that the Heavenly Father had gave his children a promise. All right, the children of Israel, but it really starts off with the elect, because we understand the children of Israel got to die. Majority of them got to die on this side, and they have to come back in the kingdom. All right. But specific ones have Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai called and placed his word in and placed his spirit in to be able to show forth his will. All right. To be able to explain what he wants on the planet Earth, who he is, what he is. All right. And those are the elect, which are the sons of the prophets. OK, which are the prophets in general. But us right now in this day, Lord willing, well, a lot of them are those ancient men that are coming back. OK, and it stated that those are the children of the prophets. So, yes, we are the children of the prophets. We are those ancient spirits that are coming back today, doing the same thing we did back in the ancient world. All right. It says something inherited from a predecessor, a heritage. So it explains here that a legacy is a heritage. OK, and that's ultimately what we are. Now that I'm gonna go back in a second, but that makes me think of a precept I want to pull up and actually have it right here. This is in Psalms chapter 127, verse 3. It says, "Lo, children are an heritage of the Lord, and the fruit of the womb is his reward." Now, when you read this, is talking about children being an heritage of the Lord. But what children is that? That's the children of Israel. When you go to that word heritage, it goes into property. All right. And we are the Lord's property. I mean, ultimately, everything's the Lord's property. Everything is his. But we're the ones that he had called. We're the ones that he chose to put his spirit in. All right. Now, when you go into it, it says children. But more so, how much more do you apply this when it comes to the prophets? OK, the children are the heritage of the Lord and the fruit of his womb. As arrows are in the hand of the mighty man, so are children of the youth. Happy is the man that hath his quiver full of them. They are not to be ashamed, but they shall speak with the enemies in the gates. So ultimately, it's going to the blessing of children. and how they're meant to carry on your heritage, carry on your legacy. Okay, they're able to, you put your name in them, and that name is perpetuated through children. So how much more important is that when it comes to the prophets, to the children of the prophets? This is important legacy that we're a part of, brothers. This isn't something light. Okay, the Lord had called us to carry on his will. He put his name within us, and within that there's responsibility. All right, so I want to go back to the definition of legacy, and the last part says the descendant of an alumnus. All right, so when I researched that, when I looked it up, I was like, alumnus, it sounds a lot like alumni or almanac. So when you go to alumnus, hold on one sec. Go back. Forgive me, Baba Shah, forgive me. Oh, alumnus. Alumnus. Sounds like alumni. So when you go into this word alumnus, and I found this very interesting, it says a male pupil or student, a male graduate, a student, a graduate. So at the end of the day, we're all pupils, we're all students. And who are we pupils under? We're pupils under the apostles. Okay? We're students under apostles. All right? And you can even go into it when you read the account in Kings. And I might as well just pull this up. The Spirit's telling me to get this, all right? Because we got to understand, after Elijah had shown forth the works of the Lord, when he had when the Lord had lit that fire on the altar, when you read it in 1 Kings the 18th chapter, all right, Elijah proved who Yahweh was right then and there, and that turned many souls away from following Baal, and that caused them to follow Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. And as you go into that account, Elijah was on the run afterwards because Jezebel wanted his head. All right, so he was on the run, and he had a revelation when he had went to Mount Sinai. All right, I mean, I believe in that particular verse it was Mount it was Mount Hermon, not Mount Hermon. It was Mount let me see here. I'll get it really quick. Might as well, right? So like it's in 1 Kings chapter. Let's see here. If I can remember what mountain it was. Let's see here. So when you go into it, it was Mount, let's see. Not Mount Carmel. It's weird. I can't find it right now. But it was another name. Oh, there we go. That's the Spirit. Mount Horeb. Okay. It says Horeb, and this is it right here. And he rose and eat and drink and went in the strength of meat 40 days and 40 nights unto Horeb, the mountain of the Most High. And when you go into Mount Horeb, that's just another name for Mount Sinai. And this is where Elijah had the revelation. All right. And the revelation he had, this is after he had fasted for a long period of time. And the angel of the Lord spoke to him. And this is when Elijah was by himself. But when you read it here, I just wanted to bring that example. But when you read it in 1 Kings chapter 19, verse 18, this is the revelation. All right, he had received a long revelation, but this is a key point because we have to remember that Elijah thought he was by himself for a period of time. So you can imagine the amount of pressure that he had felt, especially since he thought he was about to die when you read it earlier when he was on the run from Jezebel. Okay. So 1 Kings chapter 19, verse 18 says, "Yet I have left me 7,000 in Israel, all the knees which have not bowed unto Baal, and every mouth which had not kissed him." So that word, that number 7,000, 7 ultimately represents completion, right? And when you go into 7,000, it just still means completion. So there's a large amount of men that still haven't bowed down their knees to Baal. And that represents us. We're part of those 7,000 men. This is part of the heritage of the Lord. This is the legacy of the Lord. And it didn't stop with just Elijah. It grew. And Elijah and Elisha, they were examples. They were those teachers, and they had pupils or students under them. Okay. We're ultimately the alumnus of those teachers, or alumnus. All right. So going into that example of alumnus, it made me think about that, because especially when you read it here in Kings, it always talks about the sons of the prophets did this. The sons of the prophets went to him and said this. The sons of the prophets spoke to him and did this. Okay, so that was going on back then. All right, the sons of the prophets, it was more so a school. All right, that was a school where teachers were set up to teach us the word. All right, and we were students, we were pupils. All right, best believe, of course, Elijah, Elisha, all these men, they were prophets, but there was always students under them, even around the time of Samuel. All right, because who was Samuel a pupil under? He was a pupil of Eli. Remember that when you read it in 1 Samuel. When Samuel was being brought up, Samuel didn't live with his parents. Samuel didn't live with his brother. Samuel lived with Eli, and Eli was a priest. All right, and Samuel was a priest under him. So there were always examples of men who were pupils under certain men to learn of them. Elisha was a pupil under Elijah. Okay, this is the legacy of the prophets, and that same tradition is being carried on right now. Okay, that brings me to read this here in Jeremiah chapter 3, and I'm going to read it in verse 15. It says, 14, turn, O backsliding children, saith the Lord, for I am married unto you. And I will take you one of a city and two of a family, and I will bring you into Zion. So that shows us it's not a numbers thing. Not all of your friends, not all of your family are meant to be prophets. The Lord only called a select few to carry out his will, to carry out his word. Okay, he didn't give his will of the kingdom, being a governor in the kingdom, to everybody. He called certain men that he put his spirit in to do this and to carry out his will and to represent his holy name. Okay, verse 15, and I will give you pastors according to my heart, which shall feed you with knowledge and understanding. Okay, so who are those pastors? Those are those teachers, and the pupils are the ones that are going to be fed with the knowledge and the understanding. Okay, and it says, and it shall come to pass when he shall be multiplied and increased in the land, in those days, saith the Lord, they shall say no more the ark of the covenant of Yahweh, neither shall it come to mind, neither shall they remember it, neither shall they visit it, neither shall there be done any more. Because ultimately, the ark of the covenant was a shadow of things to come, which symbolically represented Yahushua. All right, that's why when you go into it, Jeremiah, he was actually the one that had stashed the ark of the covenant away. Now you can't find that in the book of Jeremiah, but you find that in the book of 2 Maccabees, where it explains that. So it's the spirit that Jeremiah had made that statement. All right, because that ultimately represents Yahushua, and that's the spirit that's within us, and that's how we're able to be. That's how we're able to continually be fed, continually to learn, because of the spirit that's within us. All right, it's able to receive spiritual things taught by those spiritual men. All right, and this is part of the will of the Lord. This is part of the heritage of the Lord. This is how it's meant to happen. This is how it's meant to play out. Okay, the Lord is using his men to do this. Okay, and that leads me to actually go into Isaiah, the 44th chapter. I'm going to start at the first verse. It says, yet now hear, O Jacob, my servant, and Israel, whom I have chosen. Thus saith the Lord that made thee and formed thee from the womb, which will help thee. Fear not, O Jacob, my servant, and thou Jeshurun, whom I have chosen. Now the word Jeshurun means upright, and it's pronounced Yashawan in the ancient Hebrew. Okay, and that's still talking about Jerusalem. For I will pour water upon him that is thirsty. So that goes hand in hand with Jeremiah, the 3rd chapter, where it talks about, I shall give you pastors according to mine heart, and they shall feed you. All right, so that's how we ultimately were being fed. Okay, that's how we're being taught. All right, through the men that the Lord had set up to teach us. Okay, through that alumnus. All right, it says, thus saith the Lord that made thee and formed thee from the womb, who will help thee. I'm sorry, I'm gonna go to verse 3. For I will pour water upon them that is thirsty, and floods upon a dry ground. I will pour my spirit upon thy seed. Let's go into that word seed. That word there is Zarai. Okay, it said seed, sowing, offspring. Okay, and we all know what offspring means, right? That means your children. A sowing, seed, semen, viral, offspring, descendants, posterity, children. Okay, of moral quality, a practitioner of righteousness, sowing time. So when you go into that word seed, we all know, but it just represents children. So it says, I will pour my spirit upon thy children. And what spirit is that? That's the Holy Spirit. And that's being poured upon the children, right? Shows you again that we are the children of the prophets. And Isaiah 44:1 is going into how the children of the prophets shall be risen back up. All right, that seed is being placed back in us. And it says, and my blessing upon thine offspring. All right, and what is the blessing? It goes into the spirit. All right, it goes into the will that was given. Verse 4, and they shall spring up among the grass as willows by the watercourses. One shall say, I am Yahweh's. The other shall call himself by the name of Jacob. And another shall subscribe him with his hand unto the Lord, and surname himself by the name of Israel. Now, can you explain that, vocab Malone? Can you explain that? Because right here, this sounds like something more heritagely. This sounds like bloodline. This don't sound like just somebody just saying, oh, okay, I'm this, that, and the third. No, when you go into seed, that's something spiritual. All right, and that's talking about children. Okay, so explain that. You need to explain that. That's not just talking about random people saying they're Christians coming to the knowledge of being a Christian. No, it's a lot bigger than that. This is a heritage or a legacy that's being brought back in due time. And the time is now. The time is nigh where children are being brought up. The children of the prophets are back. The ancient prophets are back. We are those men. Through the spirit and power of Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shai, he placed his spirit in us to do that. Okay? Because, and when you read it in Psalms 127, it says the blessing of the children are an heritage to the Lord. Okay? So we are those men coming back. And you can't go away from that. You can't get around it. This is prophecy being fulfilled right in front of your eyes. 7,000 men have not bowed their knees down to Baal. And that is happening again. The children of the prophets. This is Acts chapter 3. And I'm going to start at verse 24. It says, yea, and all the prophets from Samuel and those that follow after, as many have spoken, have likewise foretold these days. So what days are they talking about? The days that we're living in right now. Now, of course, pertaining to this time period, that's what they were talking about. But more so, they're prophesying about right now because we're living at the end of the end. This is around the time of the second coming of Mashiach Yahushua. Okay? And within that being the case, there has to be prophets out prophesying about it, prophesying the downfall of America, prophesying about the kingdom of heaven. You Christians ain't doing it. Okay? Verse 25. Ye are the children of the prophets and of the covenant which the Most High made with our fathers, saying unto Abraham, in thy seed shall all kindreds of the earth be blessed. But wait, there's more. And the brothers had brought this out in Chicago when Vocab Malone went up there. And they brought out Revelation 7 and went into that word kindreds. But when you go into the word in this particular verse, the word is patria. And it says lineage running back to some progenitor, ancestry. So in order to have a lineage running back to, there has to be seed involved in that. All right. Has to be seed. So these children are the offspring. The kindreds are the offspring of Abraham. It says a nation or tribe, a group of family, all those who in a given people lay claim to a common origin. And what's the claim of the common origin? Us being Israelites. But more importantly, us being the prophets, the children of the prophets, because we have Israelites that are out here that don't even that they have a common origin of who they are, but they don't have the understanding of the Lord. So the Lord is giving his will, his word to only particular people out of this, the kindreds. B, it says the Israelites which distributed into 12 tribes, descending from the 12 sons of Jacob. These were divided into families, which were divided into houses. So they were divided into families. So we're all here back right now with the same objective, with the same agenda in mind as the ancient prophets. And that's to represent the will, the name of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. That's to represent his power. That's to represent his glory, to represent his existence. That's what we were meant to do. And we had teachers that had taught us this word. We had teachers that had taught us who we were as a people. And within that, it was growth from there. After that water was put into us, after that word was put into us, after that spirit was put into us, we understand that we had a job to do. And that was to teach the word. And through time, there's going to be more students that are going to wake up and come under us. Okay? Now, I'm going to end off on this scripture here in Isaiah, the 8th chapter. And this is one of my favorite scriptures to go into. But when you read it, I'm going to start at verse 8 and 16. It says, Isaiah 8 and 16, bind up thy testimony, seal the law among my disciples. All right, so that goes into the word being placed into us. Okay, now, of course, they're not built into us like when the new covenant ultimately hits, when you read it in Hebrews 8, where we won't be able to go off. But it's starting right now with us learning and with us being fed with water. All right. It says, and I will wait upon the Lord that hideth his face from the house of Jacob, and I will look for him. And that's what an elect man is going to be doing right now. Okay. The Lord is hiding his face away from the whole nation, but he has his eyes set toward his men. All right. That he had placed his spirit to do his word. It says, and I will look for him, right? When you read it in Hebrews, the 11th chapter, in the 6th verse, it says, matter of fact, I'm going to go back to this, but I might as well read it and speak idly, because it says, and he will wait upon the Lord and he will look for him, right? When you go into this in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 6, and I'll jump back, it says, but without faith, it is impossible to please him. For he that cometh to the Most High must believe that he is, and this is the key point, and he is a rewarder to them that diligently seek him. Now, when you go into that word diligently, it means to investigate. All right. So when you read it in Isaiah 8 and 17, it says, and I will look for him. All right. And that's what we're going to be doing in this time. We're going to diligently seek him. And within that being the case, there's going to be a reward in place for that. Ultimately, the kingdom. But he's going to reward us in different ways. He's going to continue to feed our spirits. He's going to continue to allow us to grow. He's going to continue to open our eyes up to see these different things. OK. Verse 18, behold, and this is the key point. I and the children whom the Lord had given me are for signs and for wonders in Israel from the Lord of hosts, which dwell in Mount Zion. So who are these children? Who are the children? These got to be the children of the prophets. Was Isaiah not a prophet? He says, I and the children whom the Lord had given me. Now, when you read this here in Isaiah 7 and Isaiah 8, it does go into how he actually physically had children. All right. But it's something bigger. We're all the children of the prophets. All right. And we're all for signs and wonders in Israel. All right. And how are we assigned? Because we're representatives of the Lord. And he had gave us his spirit. All right. He gave us a spirit to prophesy, to say before, to do certain things pertaining to the will of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. Now, there is one part I want to go to in here when it goes to the children that Isaiah actually had. Okay. So give me one sec, because Isaiah had two sons. One of his name was Emmanuel. All right. When you read it in Isaiah chapter 7, verse 14. All right. So he actually did have a son named Emmanuel, but that symbolically was talking about Yahweh Shai. Okay. And also, too, when you go into it, this is Isaiah chapter 7, verse 3. Then said the Lord unto Isaiah, go forth now to meet Ahaz. All right. And Ahaz was Hezekiah's father. All right. He was the king of Judah, I believe, after King Jotham. OK. And Ahaz was actually wicked. You know what I'm saying? He didn't do the will of the Lord, but Hezekiah's son did. But when you go into it in Isaiah 7 and 3, it says, then said the Lord unto Isaiah, go forth now to meet Ahaz, thou and Shear Jeshub thy son, at the end of the conduit of the upper pool in the highway of the Philistines field. Now this is Shear Jeshub was one of Isaiah's children, right? But when you go into this, when you pronounce that name in the Hebrew, it's Shear Yashawab. Okay. And when you go into that name, it says a remnant shall return. a symbolic name for the son of Isaiah the prophet. So when you go into it, a remnant shall return. So this is the remnant that's returning back. Those 7,000 men that have not bowed down to the image of Baal of Israel, these are the ones that shall return unto the Lord. This is the heritage of the saints. This is the legacy of the saints. And ultimately, that leads me to this last one. I know I said the other one was the last one, but I want to end this off here in Romans, the 11th chapter. Let's see here. And this is really a precept. This is ultimately a precept to Isaiah. I'm sorry, this is a precept to 1 Kings chapter 19, verse 18. Let me find it really quick. So I could bear with me one sec, Baba Kashaw. All right, I'm just looking up like this. All right, so when you go into it in the book of Romans, chapter 11, verse 5, I'm going to start at verse 4. But what saith the answer of the Most High unto him? I have reserved to myself 7,000 men who have not bowed the knee to the image of Baal. Check this out. Even so, then at this present time also, there is a remnant according to the election of grace. Who is that remnant? The children, man. The children who were prophesied to come. The children that was spoken of in Isaiah, the 8th chapter and the 20th verse, who shall be for signs and wonders in Israel, the elect, the sons of the prophets, the legacy of the prophets. All right. Lord, willing, this is edifying. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Waharakakadash. Double honors to our apostles and our elders of great millstone that rule well. Peace and salutations and many blessings to you elect Akim across the four winds of this earth, kicking this word, feeding the flock in sincerity and in truth. Shalom.